when I realized that I could think differently than I was used to, it was a huge revelation for me. And then, for other people to see it, and for everything I put out, like the videos and stuff they put out, and I've written a book and like all those things. I never thought I'd do that. It was never something that I considered before, but the people around me that know me and can see that, maybe they're starting, and hopefully they're starting to think like, what, I've always wanted to write a book, or I've always wanted to do this, and I work construction, so I didn't feel like I could do that, but he did it and he does that, so I can do it too. And it's
You're listening to Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. I've spent the last 4 years trying to discover how to break the burnout cycle, and as a high achiever in a fast-paced world, I know how easy it is to slip back into old habits, leaving you feeling overwhelmed and left behind. If you're anything like me, then you need to hear this. Burning out is not your fault. Yes, you can recover from burnout, and the post-burnout growth is not only real, but it feels amazing. This podcast is dedicated to helping break the stigma around mental health in the workplace, ending burnout culture for good, and the action steps that you can take today towards your personal growth and success. So let's do it. Today's guest is Sean Robinson, author of Going Dry, My Path to Overcoming Habitual Drinking. Sean works in the construction industry and as a volunteer firefighter in Ontario, Canada. Surrounded by a macho mentality and stoicism, for a long time, Sean didn't have the confidence to share his story. At one time in his life, he was angry, overweight, drinking too much, and not the person he wanted to be in life. And for various reasons, he felt that he wasn't capable of being any different, that he was just a person, and this is the way he always was and always will be. And while Sean felt that there was no magical story of transformation here for him, that he didn't have a spiritual awakening or a near-death experience to prompt any change, Sean realized that life could be better than it was. He realized he could be a better person, a better husband, a better dad than he had been. And through thoughtfulness, dedication, and hard work, he could turn his life around. I really hope that Sean's story resonates with you. And I'm so glad to have Sean here on the podcast sharing his story. And I hope it encourages other men to step up, to speak up, and share their story and turn their lives around. Sean, welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway. And I'm currently hotboxing inside here in my storage room. It is absolutely boiling here, but it's great to be here to have you on the podcast.
Yes, Eugene, thanks. I appreciate being here, and I'm excited to get into this conversation.
Sean, if people are just tuning in right now, why should they listen to your story?
I think the biggest thing with my story is that it's something we can all work on. All of the things that I've been able to focus on and achieve with my personal growth, that's all stuff that we can relate to, and I don't think we acknowledge how close we can be to starting that change and getting the tools we need to make that happen.
And where did this journey of personal growth start for you?
For me, I basically got to a point where a lot of my old habits, my old routines, it just took me down this rabbit hole of you don't have what it takes to fix it. You know what you have to do, you just have to do it. And a lot of old beliefs that I had to maintain a certain person that I had become, or an attitude that I had. COVID had only had made it worse, and at the end of 2020, basically found myself in a frame of mind that I just couldn't fix it. I had found myself 320 pounds. My relationship with alcohol was starting to get worse, and just general negativity, borderline depression, and just not sure how to fix it, not sure how to get out. And getting to the end of 2020, started to journal, making really just took to a book to outlet in a place that I didn't have to listen to anybody. I didn't have to have the judgment. And I didn't call it a journal right away. I work construction, volunteer firefighter, very masculine, dominant spaces. And I wasn't prepared for anyone finding out that I was journaling. So getting into 2021, I just started to realize what I had created and try to commit to make some changes.
And coming from, as you say, a very masculine industry, the basically the tough guy industry where we're supposed to be always stoic and never share any of those emotions. How long did it take you to finally come out with the journal?
It was it was a good few years in the making. My weight had always been an issue up and down as it is. The different diets, I've tried different things, but it was always a confidence issue as well. It always was the reason I didn't go to the gym and maintain that routine. And the journal part, it was I was never going to talk about it because of all those things, like the guys around me, the coworkers, construction. It was, we're not journaling, we're not talking about that. It was diaries and all the things that the teenage girls do, and that different scenario. And um it wasn't until I started to feel some growth that I realized it was a journal, and that I realized what benefit I was getting from it, and using it more as a tool more so than just a place to brain dump and feel no judgment.
And when you started the journal, was it, again, as you said, was it just a brain dump? Or was it something that you, let's say, came across on maybe a podcast or someone posted saying, "Oh, let's start a journal, you'll feel better"? Or was it something that just came naturally? You said, "I'm going to start writing down my thoughts and see what happens."
It Short answer, it just felt like a place I could brain dump and I could get my thoughts out. In the beginning, I never, as much as my attitude was about other things, I just never felt like self-help, personal development, podcasts in any fashion were for me. It was not just the people around me weren't into it, and this was end of 2020, where I think more podcasting with COVID picked up. And since then it's gone even more growth. But I didn't really know enough about it to tell myself my thoughts about it were wrong.
And what was the tipping point or the rock bottom that made you click, that you were like, okay, something needs to change here, or this is the moment that it's all going to come out, that enough is enough? Or was it a positive spark? You're like, okay, I've the confidence now to make the change. What was it for you?
No, it was that rock bottom moment for me, leading to the point I needed that to change, was being at that weight, feeling the pressure of being on the fire department, and being in a terrible physical fitness, and then just overall lifetime to that point of weight being up and down, and the negativity. I wasn't finding the positive in anything, and a real culmination of the lifestyle I had created and the way I felt about it. Just a lot of pressure to figure it out. Feeling like I had to fix it myself, that I couldn't talk about it. It was such a amount that I just, and I always felt that, and I never called it rock bottom in the beginning, but I always felt that it always had to be, worst case scenario, that rock bottom picture was expected to be something, that met a definition, but that we, and we have to create what that definition is to ourselves. When we reach that point, it's like, you can continue doing this, I could continue doing this, or I could decide to fix it and do something. And that point for me was, I was just tired of being overweight as much as I was tired of that attitude. There wasn't any growth in the version that I was at that moment.
What you said there about, you said there was an expectation for you to remain the same. Was that
Mhm.
an expectation that you felt from others around you, or was that an expectation that you had put on yourself?
Ultimately, I put it on myself. I think I put it on myself because of the environment I was in, the upbringing that I had had, the things that I witnessed, the things that I read, just the overall my life up till that point. I just, for whatever reason, believed that certain things were true about me, or that because of certain things and places I come from, that I just had to maintain them. Like, and it was just I just held it on my own without really challenging the concept that was, that idea.
And what you said about rock bottom, you said that you felt that you had to wait for the worst case scenario, and that was something that as well that I felt as well in my journey, where um my definition of rock bottom used to keep changing, because when I was like, okay, I've finally hit a low point here, and next thing I would say, oh, it could be worse, and then that rock bottom no longer becomes the rock bottom anymore. It's like, oh well, I could be homeless, or oh, everyone around, I could lose everyone, and everyone could die, and I'd be completely alone. And the definition of rock bottom just kept on changing. The next thing it was like, how low does it need to go before I make the change?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be an overall picture either. Rock bottom doesn't have to be inclusive of all of the things that you have, because that threshold can be, I don't want to be 320 pounds. So my physical fitness and diet is a rock bottom at that point, or hopefully less. And like, if you want to learn more and do more courses, or you want to be a better person, like you have to have a limit, or you can reach at the rock bottom of all of those things, but there has to be a point where in each of the different areas of your life, you have, a baseline and where you'd like to be.
Exactly, because even when you just bring up fitness there, and if someone is like 250 pounds and they say, oh, I really want to lose the weight, but it's so much effort to go to the gym and it's so hard to work out. And of course, if you think rock bottom is 250, the next thing you're like, oh wait, no, it could be worse. It could be 300. It's going to be so much harder when you hit 300 to go back to the gym then and try and
Hmm.
try and work off that extra 50 pounds.
Hmm. Yeah, and a lot of that concept is like, if you have to establish that for yourself, right? Like if 250 makes you feel that way, or like for me, like when I come back, I was like 320, like that is enough. 320 was the absolute rock bottom for me, because I couldn't let that get any worse. So to pick up and decide, like, I'm not going to do the same things anymore. I'm not going to eat the same way. Like I'm just, and for me, it started with, I'm just going to take a break from alcohol and see how I feel and see what happens. And that was the catalyst for me.
So that was the starting point for your, let's say, recovery, or for getting out of rock bottom. It was, okay, maybe I should just cut back on alcohol, or was it just cold turkey?
It was the end of 2020, Christmas time, all of the things that were coming, and it was just the end of the year, and dry January. There were some people around me setting New Year's resolutions and doing a version of a dry January, and I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that this year, and I'm thinking about, I'm drinking, and that when like a function, or I'm going out, there's always staying up late, and you're doing that into the evening, and there's overeating and snacking and all of the things. And I thought, to not drink and to commit to that for maybe that month or whatever it was at the time, a month, um, I won't do those things, and maybe I'll get more energy, and then I'll not be hungover, and I'll want to go and exercise. And I have three young kids, and I thought, like, I'll just have more energy and more presence with them, and I'll want to do more with them, whereas I wouldn't before, or I'd hold back and do less active because I was tired or sore or whatever. So the challenge was to go January without. And really, at the time, I just didn't know. It had never occurred to me to do that before. Like, I grew up in an environment where alcohol was just, it was what you did. It was around. You were Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever. Every function, it was based around it. And I know a lot of society goes this way, but it just never occurred to me that I could do something different, that I could just not do that anymore.
Yeah, and even when I was growing up in Ireland, it was very similar. The drinking culture is so it's such a prominent part of society, that if you go out and you're not drinking, people give you like, they look at you with daggers. They're
Hmm.
like, oh, there's something suspicious about him if he's not drinking. He has a plan, or he's scheming or something, and there's a lack of trust if you're not drinking and you're not driving. And they're
Hmm.
they're like, no, he's up to something. We can't trust him, or he's a party pooper, or he's so dry. He has no humor. There's no fun in him if he's not drinking. And there's such a social pressure that it's almost like every time you're drinking, there's a game of who can last the longest.
Hmm.
The social element isn't even there. It's like, oh, you're only 3 pints in, or you're only after 3 shots. You need to keep up with everyone else.
Hmm. Yeah, and I was the biggest advocate of that before because like whether I trusted my friend group or not, you didn't want to be the last one, the first one to go to bed. And it was a lot of that expectation environment. But then, like, in my own experience, because I didn't know any different really after reaching the certain legal age and having the lifestyle, it was like we didn't trust those people that were drinking water in the corner and party poopers. Like, we didn't trust them because they weren't in the group, but we decide that for ourselves. I may not go out to the bars anymore and stay there till last call, but that doesn't mean I can't be in that environment. I can't be drinking something else. And if I want to be, in the corner not saying anything, I'm creating that vibe and that environment for everybody on my own. We can show up differently. We just need to know that and realize that.
Yeah, and also when people say like, "Oh, you're the one not drinking," and they're like, "Oh no, you need to keep up," and they want to include you, but it's really because they feel more insecure that let's say if you have discipline not to drink, and then they feel bad and they're like, oh well, I'm already 4 pints in, I'm starting to feel it, and this person is too sober, so they feel almost like embarrassed or humiliated that they're not gathering their thoughts as well. They're like, no, you have to be slurring just as much as I am. We need to be on the same level so I don't
Mhm.
feel as bad. And there's a lot, that was always the behavior that I came across. Even now, where I can still go, I enjoy a glass of wine, but I'd stop then. I'm like, oh no, I'm on water for the rest of the night. And as soon as I switch to water, people are like, oh wait, you're not drinking anymore, but I'm still drinking. If I'm still drinking, you need to drink. And I just laugh, and they're like, no, that's my limit. I'll feel better tomorrow. I have to go to the gym tomorrow. I'm not going to have any more than this one glass. And straight away, there's just like there's tension because they feel like, oh, you're no longer um taking the same social cues. You're supposed to still be drinking. We're supposed to be
Mhm.
on the same wavelength.
Yeah, and that you know what that's a learned um that's a learned environment or a trained environment because when people around you I found when people around me started to really know, okay, that's my boundary or that's my limit, the pressures stop. Like they just know that it's not going to go anywhere. But if like I didn't know that about myself in the past to know that I could just turn that on and off when I wanted, and being one of the biggest advocates for people to keep going, it was like deciding that I didn't want to show up that way anymore and realizing that, you know, encouraging everybody else, we're all our own people, but at the same time, you know, do they want to do that? Like right now, like I agree, there was some moments where when I wasn't drinking and I was in the process of deciding, which was kind of in my book and how I've written that is like um I go out with these people and they're like they feel to the servers at the restaurants or wherever we are it's like, oh well, he's not drinking because he's on a break or he's not doing it, and I don't feel like I have to explain it, but the people that are still doing that feel like they're explaining it for me and doing me a favor by putting it out there when I'm drinking something that's not alcoholic or at the point where I was drinking a near beer or something.
Yeah, exactly. Where they feel that, oh, almost like a weakness that you're not drinking, and
Hmm.
you need to put an excuse in place. And it's just funny. It's just how embedded drinking culture is. And then there's other places in the world where they don't drink anything. I think like
Hmm.
I know people out in Bali, and they're dancing. They're dancing away like in lunchtime, or they're just going. You think oh, they must be on something. And it's like, no, it's just they're full of life and full of energy and high spirited. There's
Hmm.
no alcohol involved. They're not looking for any excuse to drink all the time. Or even here, like in Switzerland, where alcohol is a lot more expensive. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to go out and on an absolute bender every weekend because it's too expensive.
Mhm.
And there's less of that drinking culture here also. Um, but it's just funny how embedded drinking culture is in some places but back in Ireland it's just toxic, where people feel that no, you have to drink or else you're an outsider. And
Mhm.
so when you stopped drinking, did you feel that you had to remove yourself from that environment for a while because there was social pressures or social cues that made you want to drink, or were you um, just so headstrong that you didn't give into those social pressures?
Well, at first it was like I had set the goal of January, and a couple weeks in, there was a couple people around me that had similar goals, and they had gone back to whatever routine they had before. And I had tried this before, and by that second week, it's like, oh, you made it, you're fine. Like, I'll try again next year. But this time felt different for me because of what I had, like that weight I had gotten to, and the way I felt, and the way that I had written it in this journal, like beating myself up, like you're better than this, like why can't you figure it out, like it can't be that hard, and all the things I would say. So that midweek of January was like, no, I'm not ready yet. So I had committed to that 30 days. And, as I got to that and realized like, oh, I just don't feel like I'm done yet. I feel like I've only just started. February is a short month. I want to try it too. And, as I started to kind of build on the early success, if you will, of that, getting by the 2 week period, the first month, and then seeing other people around me fall off their goals, it was like strength and confidence to just see how far I could go. And as I started to open up to that, it was I listening to more podcasts, reading more books, doing more research, learning about habits and routines, and cycles of time to reestablish lifestyles. And as I started to learn more about it, it was like 100 days became the new thing, and I'm going to do it for that long. But early on, I kind of set rules for myself that was like, I'm going to do this, but I don't want to just hide in my basement and not see anybody, not do anything. I want to be able to make this work with the lifestyle that I have. So I wanted to go out. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to at least do some of these things. And when I did that, it was like, I'm not going to twist the cap on a water bottle in the corner and be that person that I had seen in when I was drinking. It was like find a good balance of both. And I did that with a few different things, but like buying a coffee cup, one of those Yeti style cups. Like I just had my own cup and I'd pour whatever I want in it, but it would be kind of like a security blanket for me. And then, just different tactics, and to not do it or to avoid the pressures, it was like just telling myself, which it was at the time, just a break. But the people around me seemed to buy in a bit more because, oh, he's just on a break. He'll be back. He's just on a break. So it took a bit of that pressure away without even knowing that's what I was doing for myself.
And how did it affect, let's say, because you continued, you noticed the energy level shift, the change. So it started off as a 30-day, 60-day, 100-day, and then you was like, oh, I just feel so much better.
Yeah, it was, I wasn't hungover anymore. And I would argue in the past, like, oh, I don't get hungover. Meanwhile, like I didn't realize the extension of, it's not that next day. It was like the couple days, 3 days after, or the following week. And, the secondary effects of the energy that was drained from me, and like motivation and all of those other things. So seeing that benefit, and realizing how I felt was like, I could feel this way and I could carry on this way and use the things that I've picked up on in these moments, be it that cup or whatever. Um, I just why am I going to go back to feeling like crap again? And it was in that where it's like, and then at the same time, going through 100 days, it was like, what if I could do this for a whole year? Like this is crazy. I'll never do this again. Like it was like, what if I could do this a whole year? So then it became an even bigger challenge to just kind of push through all of 2021. And I'm still not drinking, but at that time and not knowing where I was headed, it was like, what if I could do this for a whole year? So just really taking those small goals by 30 days, 60 days, and then just adding a bit to it each time and really realizing that I was creating and giving myself the tools. I was giving myself the confidence, and I was doing the things with the tracking and the small goals, and I was setting it up exactly the way that it's proven to work without even knowing I was doing that. And then I'd learn more about it with the things I was reading and listening, and really just giving myself that backup to keep kind of going that direction.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like taking a small goal and just reinforcing it then over time. And
Mhm.
as you said, you like when you lost all the weight, was that simply just by giving up the alcohol that you realized you had more energy for exercise, or was it that you just had the clarity somewhere along your journey that maybe you were um, exploring other areas of self care, that you decided to lose the weight, or what was the trigger to saying, okay, I'm going to lose the weight? Was it because of the alcohol, or was it just because you had the extra energy?
Well, no, I would say it's both. I would say like because of challenging who I thought had to be true about myself with my relationship with alcohol or those things. It was like by challenging that, it was like, oh, I could challenge this too. I could not eat, fast food, or I could, just go for a walk in the neighborhood. It was a combination of a few things. And in the beginning, where it was like in an effort to lose weight, and in an effort to lose weight, it was, focusing on my diet and my relationship with alcohol. It just kind of compounded in a way that things were so related. But as far as the weight loss goes, like I just didn't put pressure on myself to lose 100 pounds today. I didn't even think about 100 pounds. It was just, I want to feel better. I want to like have a better attitude. I don't want to be so negative. And all of these things, they're directly related to each other. And whether we realize it or not, it was all the same system. So as I started to lose weight and I started to feel better with not drinking and, even just brushing my teeth, like I was testing the 100-day theory and the cycles. It was doing these things to just pick up on it. I was really trying it. And then after that 100 days of brushing my teeth twice a day, like I couldn't not do it. Right. It was just me now. And, these things, it was really cool to kind of see it work the way that they say it does. But, for the not drinking and the exercise, losing weight, it was like after a year and I was down 40 pounds, it was like, wow, like, okay, I'm not drinking anymore, but I'm not overeating, and I'm not beating myself up if I have a birthday cake or if I'm doing something, because I live this lifestyle now that it's just I'm gonna, still go for that walk or go for that run or do that thing. And I learned that I can still have a bit of celebration, and how important that celebration is without taking it entirely out of my life. And the underlying really for me was I felt like in order to do anything, I had to be the best at it, and I had to go full out. And, we start a diet and we have to do it perfectly and we have to do it all the time. We're going to fail most times. And that was the truth with everything, not just dieting, but exercise. It was like, if I can't do it the best and I can't do it full out, it's not going to work. We have to get rid of that mindset.
I love what you said there when you were on about brushing your teeth, just going back a little bit. What you were like, after the 100 days, it felt weird not doing it anymore because you said, this is just me now.
Mhm.
And from people who haven't started that journey of self growth or self discovery, as soon as you say, "Oh, why don't you try this?" There's like, "Oh, I could never do that. This is the way I was born. I could never change. This is the way things have always been. So why would I start doing that now? Or
Mhm.
I could never do that daily. Or I think I just forget. I forget about it because I don't do it right now." And it's like, what if you just tried it out for a week? 2 weeks, 6 weeks, something simple. One things that I always start people with is start your day with a glass of water, because then every decision you make is probably going to be clear. You hydrate your brain after a long night's sleep. Your mouth's probably feeling dry anyway. So you have a
Mhm.
glass of water, you're going to help rehydrate your body, detox a little bit, and maybe wait an hour or two before you have that coffee, and you'll
Mhm.
probably be thinking clearer. And then they feel like after a week, they're like, oh, my skin's feeling a bit better and I don't feel as groggy in the mornings. And then after like 5 or 6 weeks, Some people drop off and they're like, "Oh, why do I feel sick?" And I'm like, "Are you still drinking the water?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that." And other people are like, "Oh, it feels weird if I don't drink my water in the morning." And they're like, "Is that strange?" And I'm like, "No, of course it's not strange, because you're actually hydrating your body when it hasn't been hydrated in so long. That
Mhm.
headache wasn't brought on by like they're like, if they had a headache in the morning, they were taking ibuprofen or paracetamol or something, rather than just having that glass of water. They were just thirsty, they were dehydrated. And it
Mhm.
was the small habit over time, whereas that once they had developed it over 6 to 10 weeks, they were like, it feels weird not doing it. It became part of who they were.
Yeah, and that glass of water, honestly, could be like I'm climbing a mountain to some people, right? But how are we setting ourselves up for that? Is it because it's cold? Is it because it's warm? It can be something we set out for us ahead of time. You pour it in a glass, it's in the fridge or it's on the counter, it's ready for you. And then are we stressing about the fact that it's this big glass of water? Well, let's just take a sip of it first. We're going to start our day with one gulp of that glass. No other pressure. It's not even a pressure to finish it, but it's like, showing up at the gym like James Clear in Atomic Habits. So you go to the gym, don't even go in, just get used to driving there. It's like, having that one sip of that glass of water. Well, you're already drinking water, you might better finish it. So it's like setting a smaller goal than really what you're hoping to achieve. And eventually, you can push yourself a bit easier and you get to it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's about like making it a smaller obstacle. And next thing you realize, well, I'm already here, so I might as well do more. Or
Mhm.
well, I already have the glass of water in front of me. I'm halfway through it, and you feel like, well, it'd be pretty wasteful just to throw this down the sink. I'd probably feel bad. I might as well just drink it. Same
Yeah.
way as if you had a bottle of like lemonade or something in front of you, and you drink half of it. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to pour half of it down the sink. If it's in front of you, you'll probably end up drinking it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and setting it up ahead of time, if you've got other things in the fridge, most of us do, it's in front of something else and it's ready. If it's, in a position where it's easier to get at than something else, you open a can and you're drinking a, soda, you're on your way. It's all about making it less difficult to do the things we're trying to do. Setting our gym clothes out because we want to get dressed and go for a walk in the morning. So when we wake up in the morning and we see them, and I do this, so I see my gym stuff or workout stuff sitting on the table. I get up, I see them, like it's an immediate reminder to go and do that thing. Like I've given myself enough time in the day to do that. If I don't set those clothes out, do I remember it first thing? Is it something I feel like I have to do? Do I excuse it? A lot of these things that I've worked on with weight loss and mindset shift and real like identity, it was like really just learning this, but then compounding it when I felt capable. I would do sit-ups, and instead of stressing about 20, 50, 100 sit-ups, I'm just doing one every night or every day. I'm just going to do one sit up, but I'm sitting down there, I'm in position, and one is the goal. And the goal I would write on the calendar, whatever mark I would put to circle or X the day. But I'd never do just one. But that was what I had to do to mark it as a success.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm already here. Might as well keep doing more.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and and when you said that one, did you have a thing in the back of your mind that was like, well, I'm already here. I might as well do 10. And if you didn't have the 10, you'd feel the failure. Did you still have that negative narrative? Because that was something that I felt when when I first burned out, and I was told to take 3 or 4 weeks off work, you'll rest, recharge, and recover. And I didn't know how to recover from burnout. So what I did was I looked up everything that I saw on the internet that was possibly going to help me recover from burnout really quickly. And I started doing everything. And I put this pressure on myself. I need to do everything so I can get recover from this as quickly as possible. And then I started berating myself and shaming myself for, God, you're not recovering fast enough. You need to do more. And I was doing the complete opposite. I was going hell for leather on so many things. And then I was berating myself for, this is taking longer than it should. I'm I should be doing this many stretches. I should be doing this much cold exposure. I should be doing all of this. And this is how I recover. Rather than taking a step back and just taking a breath and being like, how much can I handle today? What is my capacity? And set the boundary at that.
Mhm.
Set it at one sit up. And if I could only just do the one sit up, it's like, okay, if I can only do one, that means I need time to recover, to rest. And maybe I can do more tomorrow. If not, okay, let's look at something else. And but without getting too complacent and just saying, "Oh, I feel bad after one. I probably won't do it tomorrow." I was like, no, there was still the accountability that I had to at least attempt. And
Mhm.
but if I made the attempt and I wasn't able to do it, or I wasn't able to do the 10 because I did 10 yesterday and I can only do one today. I'm like, okay, today is just a one day. Maybe tomorrow I can try for two, or I can try for five. And it was
Mhm.
about changing the narrative and showing myself that little bit more compassion, because it was easier to stay consistent if I wasn't blaming myself or talking myself down every time that I didn't meet my expectations.
Mhm. And I have a couple of thoughts there, but like you set that goal small, especially when you're getting started. We're not going to do 100 sit-ups every day or whatever because that's a lot, right? It feels like a lot. And your body, like if you're not used to doing it, it's going to feel like even more. So to set that, that goal so small, you're going to do it. It's a lot more likely you're going to do it because to do one of something or, a small walk or a sip of that glass of water, and that being the minimum goal, you can celebrate that goal. That celebration is important because it tells your brain, it tells your mind that whatever you're doing, you've succeeded at that level. And that level has to change. We can't always go with one. We can, because obviously just what we're talking about and burnout and making sure that we're, giving ourselves that credit. But maybe your one becomes five, or maybe your one becomes 20 or 5 minutes instead of 2 minutes, whatever it is you're trying to work on. Move that enough that you're giving yourself a bit more because you've been doing it for a year, and 1 or 1 minute isn't quite enough. You can do confidently without feeling that 10 minutes is the new limit. But it's small enough that keeps us going. It's small enough that makes it realistic that even when we're not feeling great, we're still going to do that one thing. We're going to have that one sip or whatever, and mark the day as a success.
And now that, let's say, you have all of this in place, where you have, let's say, you have your new fitness routine, you are, let's say, you're going dry of alcohol. What is your current, let's say, 1% improvement that you're focusing on every day? Is there something else that's, you're like, okay, what's the next challenge that you're focusing on?
Well, the second, so my other thought plays right into this, but there's a lot of social media, a lot of accounts, a lot of people that are in that promotion space and showcasing what they're working on, and realistically, a lot of the people that are putting that out there, they're at a different level than we are when we get started. There's a lot further along in the process. It's not being better or worse. It's just they're further along. And when we compare ourselves naturally to
Mm.
the videos we're seeing, the people we're seeing, we feel like that's the level we have to be at. So the morning routine and all of the things that are involved, like you were saying, cold plunges, diets, amounts of exercise, how many pages you read in a book, what you're listening to, that's a lot. Who has the time for that? Especially when you're just trying to focus on getting that glass of water out of the way, or whatever version. And it's like, for me, that 1%, I still have a full-time job. I have 3 kids under 11, and the extra sports and stuff they're doing, and the things I'm doing with endurance running, and it's a lot, and we can't work on everything all the time. So my 1% is different day to day. Today it might be that I'm not eating fast food, and tomorrow it might be that I'm going for that walk or that run. The next day it might be I'm reading 10 pages of a book. It's just that doing something that's going to put me closer, even if it's going to take longer than someone that doesn't have the schedule I have, because we're all different. It's just doing something that puts me a bit closer to, that person that I didn't think I could be before.
Yes, I love that. And that's a very good point to make also, that it doesn't need to be the 1% of the same thing for 100 days in a row. It's, I'm doing a 1% improvement. The way I like to think of my 1% are gifts to my future self.
Mhm.
So I look at, for instance, my fitness goal. Some people are like, you have the strangest fitness goal, but I set it like, wow, almost 5 years ago now. And people are like, oh, you should want to look ripped in your 20s and on all this. And I said to myself, I want to look like Henry Cavill when I'm 40. I want to have that, uh, the Man of Steel, or even the Witcher, just to have that buff look,
Mhm.
but also very healthy when I'm 40. And then they're like, oh, but that's a very long term goal. You can slack off now. And I'm like, no, no, I know that's going to take me a long time. And rather than getting overwhelmed to do it in 2 years or 3 years, I know that I can build slowly over time and work towards that. And I know that every workout, or every time I take the time to recover, or every time that I choose the right meal, I'm like, this is my 1% towards my 40-year-old self. And I
Mhm.
know that as I grow older, I'm like, okay, I feel good about myself, but that's because I've given myself all of these gifts over the years, and then I congratulate myself. So
Mhm.
that's one of my um ways of thinking of all my 1% adding up over time. That they're
Mhm.
all gifts that I am giving to my future self.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to think about it. And it just reminds me of something I heard that I kind of keep in my mind too is Ed Milet on his show was talking about the pinata. And while we want everything immediately, and a lot of our society now is very impatient with the things we need to do to change. And yes, you're thinking long-term goals, but if we think about that goal, I think about that goal as that pinata. And every time we take that swing, we may not see that result. We may not see the damage done to that pinata. We may not see, that 1% closer to the goal we're working on. But we keep swinging. We keep swinging because it's going to break someday, right? We're going to get there someday. But then you're feeling like you don't want to today. It's not a great day, but you still take that swing anyways. You go for that walk, you do that thing because it will break. You one day you will realize that it's broken open. You get the reward from whatever is inside, right? The piñata breaks. And when I'm not feeling like I want to do that workout, or I'm not doing that diet, whether it is doing something or not doing something, it's just another swing at that piñata for that long-term goal.
And also, if that pinata broke on the first swing, you'd be like, oh, well, that's done. It's the person that you become while you're swinging at that pinata. If it took
Mhm.
you 1 year, 5 years, 10 years to break that pinata, the person that you become along in the process, you're probably going to enjoy, once that pinata breaks, a lot more. The more refined and more clear you become, and more self aware you become on that journey.
Yeah, and the other thing, we're not going to break it at the same time, right? If you and I started something right now and we're working on the same thing, we're starting from way different experience. We're a different level. Like it shouldn't be expected that we meet there at the same time. So we can't compare with each other. We can't compare to those around us or the ones we're seeing on social media with that perfect morning routine and all the things we can't imagine having time for. It's we just have to keep going and celebrate the people around us. I didn't cheer for the people around me because I just was so into why can't I have that? It was terrible. But like there's a lot of success out there. We can all have it and we should be happy for each other. And we will get there at different times.
Yes. One thing we also have to touch back on was, you made a great point about hitting rock bottom. And I know we were discussing this before we started the episode, but we were talking about the power of rock bottom. And we've already mentioned how some people, they hit rock bottom, and then it's like, but it isn't a low enough low point for them. And we came across this quote. It was by Dan Coe. I only came across it today, and it just hit so deep. It was so powerful, and it was, the greatest thing that can happen to you is hitting rock bottom. The worst thing that can happen to you is that you never hit rock bottom. You get just close enough, not painful enough to change, and just comfortable enough to stay the same. People live in this place their entire lives, blinded by negative emotion and numb to the positive. A constant loop of the same day over and over. No challenge, no skill, no growth, just survival. The only way out is to feel so deep into what you don't want out of life that you have no choice but to slingshot in the opposite direction. It just hit so deep because that's what burned, or when it burned out and I hit rock bottom. It was like, no, I can't go on feeling like this. I have to make a change. And it's like, this could get a lot worse. Yes, I understand it. It could be so much worse. But do I really want to go through all of that pain and then feel like I've lost all self worth and that there's no way out of this? Because I already was starting to feel that. And I was like, no, this is not the way I want to go. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to start making those small changes over time. I know it wasn't going to happen overnight, but making those small changes. And now it's over 4 years later. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm so glad I got out of that space. You can get out of that space. You just have to make that change. But I also see a lot of people who are suffering day to day, and they always say, well, it could be a lot worse. I could be out of work, but they literally dread every morning when they wake up. But they're like, well, at least I'm not homeless, or at least I can pay my bills, or at least I can get through another day, get through another week. But it's just a state of survival, and that's not living.
No, and I love that quote. It speaks a lot to the journey that I've been on, and I felt for so long that yeah, it could be much worse. I could have this, I could have that, and I'd compare to somebody that had things worse, and it's not to compare with others. And I wish whoever I compared to is found their way as well. But we have to make that decision for ourselves and decide that we're not using that excuse anymore. I started to pick out the things I used to use as excuses, and it could be worse is an excuse. Like it could be worse, but it could be better. I do I hide behind the fact that it could be worse and not do anything about it? Do I hide behind the fact that this is who I think I have to be? Or do I hide behind the fact that, I just don't have the energy or the means or the time or the whatever I used to tell myself? Or do I just take that one small step towards that 1% we talked about of being better than I was before, or being closer towards the version that I'd like to show up at, and the version I want my kids to see, and the version that I want to be at work. And as soon as I started to capture what I was using as an excuse and how I was excusing it and what that meant, did I really see how much I was just holding myself there, how much that, I was in my control, but it was in my control to stay where I was because just like the quote, I would not really feel like I had to do enough to get out of it, but to keep myself there. Well, it wasn't that bad because it wasn't like this or that. It wasn't like so and so. Rock bottom doesn't have to be the way that it's pictured in worst case scenario. Rock bottom can still be very respectful for, someone else's rock bottom could be like your top goal. We don't know. We just don't need to, hold ourselves to that. We just need to decide for ourselves what it is, and we don't want to be there anymore. So let's do what we can to get away from it. Let's use that as our defining moment. And really rock bottom tomorrow hopefully is better than today, right? We can move that through bottom line as far as we want.
That was a great point about how one person's rock bottom could be another person's goal. And that also made it very difficult for me to move out of my rock bottom moment because I had the narrative that this can't be a rock bottom. You should be grateful for what you have. And that's why you shouldn't be looking for change. You should be grateful and appreciate what you have. No matter how numb and exhausted I was feeling, I still had that narrative that was you shouldn't be looking for help and support. You should just be grateful. And for me, that wasn't what I wanted to achieve. I I felt so cynical about what I was doing, but at the same time, I was like, there are so many people who would appreciate this job or appreciate this position. And if you're feeling completely, you feel like you're not getting the same energy or reciprocated value from the work you're putting in, then this is no longer a fit for you. But it could be a great fit for someone else. So who am I to take up this space? And that was one of the moments where I made a decision that I had to move on from my old job. I was like, no, I'm no longer serving to my best potential here. I'm not serving myself, and I'm not showing up as my best version for my team. So that's where I just have to make a decision. I'm like, look, this is time for me to move on and find out where's my next chapter. And it was that narrative could have gone both ways. That I said, appreciate what you have and don't make the change. Just suck it up and be grateful for what you have, or appreciate what you have and realize, okay, it was a great fit for you for such a long time and it helped you progress to where you are now. It doesn't feel like a fit anymore. Maybe you've just evolved and it could be a great fit for someone else. So maybe free up that space for someone else to progress and evolve in the same way as you, or in their own way. They may stay in that position for the next 50 years. But it's time for you to move on and see what's next. It's time for you to make that change.
Mhm. And you know, the circles that we keep, we stay the same a lot of the times because of the people we're around. And you know, maybe the people we're comparing to find the inspiration from us to make that change for themselves as well, right? If we're comparing in that way, you know, we start to make some changes. Well, maybe the people we're comparing to start to do their own version of that, and they start to find their own confidence, and all of a sudden that circle you're keeping, we're all growing together. You know, a lot of even this conversation and all the work that you're doing with your show, it's like we're giving this back in a way that hopefully our old selves and the people that can relate are finding the confidence to make that decision too. And you know, that to me is also some strength in not staying where we used to be, not staying in that moment, because you know it's bringing other people with us. It's showing that, you know, not only is it possible, but you can have it too.
Yes, and that was one of the reasons why I started the podcast, was that so much of what I talked about first, people just deflected and they were like, you can't talk about that. No one talks about that. And I was like, okay, all the more reason that we need to start normalizing these conversations. I want to see who
Mhm.
else is out there who wants to talk about this, all this overwhelm and all this expectation that is just expected of everyone, and that we're just supposed to live with it and don't make any change. If we don't talk about it, no one's going to take any action.
Mhm.
And then I start seeing the ripple effect into everyone around me and to other people who I didn't even realize were listening. And I only hear it maybe a few months later. They're like, "Oh, I actually really like that episode." I'm like, "Oh, wow, wow, you listen?" Oh, and we someone who be in maybe not in my first circle, but maybe two or three circles out. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, I listened to that episode. It was actually really good. I heard a lot from that guest." And I was like, "Oh wow," and that had an effect on you, and that's a win for me. One person
Mhm.
listens and it makes a change. That's a win
Mhm.
in your journey, especially as you're with your going dry, and let's say your friend circles, and you felt that you were comparing, um, oh, I'm making a change here, and you feel kind of vulnerable. Did that have a ripple effect on your group and your environment as well as you were making the change? Did they approach you and say like, "Oh wow, that really spoke to me"?
Um, Actually, a couple angles there. First, yeah, there was people that would come out and just, especially coming from like a construction environment, and that, like, you know, I know in different sectors we feel we have to be a certain way or live a certain lifestyle to be in that sector. Construction has a stigma. Like if you work construction, you have to have the certain lifestyle, do certain things. Substance abuse and alcohol is there, but like to challenge and to be away from that, I was finding other people were coming out and saying like, "Wow, like this is great. They keep this up. You have no idea who's listening." And start to see other people around me that I would work with that I didn't realize, had so much in common, and they would start to do their own version of that. And the other side is like, as you start to change, like, I wasn't doing so in the beginning because I was afraid at what I'd heard about you start to change your life and you lose all your friends. You don't have the friends anymore, especially not drinking and what we talked about with the expectation of the social lubricant and what all the things alcohol is. But like, if you're not going to do this anymore, you're not going to have the same friends. And it was stressful, but I'd learned that they're going to happen. That's going to happen anyways, and it's going to happen anyways in the sense that if we start to like playing baseball and our friends don't like playing baseball, we may grow a bit further apart because they're just not into baseball. If it's alcohol, I started to not drink as much. Well, I wasn't staying up till last call or going to certain things because it was just going to be a mess, or only going for a bit. I didn't lose friends. I still have friends, but it was like I just grew further apart from people that we only had that in common. We only had that one thing in common, whether we were at a baseball game or whatever. And it wasn't that I lost those friends. It didn't happen immediately, right? This was something that happened over a period of time. But in the other way, like I grew closer to more people. Like as my interests changed, I grew closer to people with similar interests. So it's not to say that you change your lifestyle in any version and you don't have friends anymore. You lose all your friends. Like it's gradual, and you get different friends, or you keep the same friends and you grow together. I've seen it both ways.
Yeah, I even found as well, even when I was kind of transitioning through my 20s, the people who were in still in the club scene and the drinking scene, and I was like, this is not for me. And I just started hanging out with them less and less. And it wasn't like I made a clear point where I'm like, I'm no longer friends with you. It was just, we're kind of in different stages of our lives. And I'm just kind of, I phased them out, but I didn't say like, oh, because you're in this phase of your life, we can't be friends. In the back of my head, I was like, we're not on the same level right now, but I would love to reconnect in the future. This
Mhm.
is where you're at right now. Great, you do you, but it's not where I'm at. But I would love to see where you are 5, 10 years from now. And I've reconnected with people that I hadn't talked to in about 12 years. And I just had the deepest conversations with them. And I was like, I love where you are at your life in your life right now. I love that you're more settled, that you're more self-aware, and I really want to stay in touch. And then they were like, oh, they're at first they were a bit off guard because they were like, I wasn't expecting that from you. We never had that deep a conversation before, and but they were like, I really appreciate that you can share that with me, and just by being vulnerable, because some people always just saw me as being cold and stoic and showing no emotion, having this poker face. But and even still to this day, they still think, oh, I'm like a very, very serious, almost business-like. But when I'm quiet, it's because I'm listening, and I'm listening to see not just to what people are saying, but what is behind those words and the
Mhm.
narrative, and how they're truly feeling, what's behind the social cues. And then they're like, oh, you're observing me too much. And next thing they get like super kind of conscious. They're like, you're analyzing me. But I'm like, no, I really want to understand you as a person. And then I start talking. They're like, okay, you're asking. Most people just talk about the weather, or they talk about cars, or they talk about sports. But I don't talk about any of those. I'm like, no, I hate small talk. And it's unnerving for a lot of people because they don't explore those deeper levels.
Mhm.
Whereas I like talking, I just go straight to the deep questions. If I want to know about you, I'm going to ask the deeper questions. That makes you uncomfortable. Okay, great. Let's pick up on another day, or not at all. But I found that in those periods of my life where people were a bit more superficial, I just realized I was expending a lot more energy, or I felt that I needed to be on the same level as them. I needed to drink to the same level as them just so we could connect. And that didn't serve me.
Mhm.
And I realized, okay, it's easier for me to break that connection for now and start living truer to myself, to be more authentic to myself. And then I felt, okay, I have a bit more energy, I have a bit more confidence in who I am. And if they want to meet me at that same level, great. If not, then there's nothing lost. You're living your life, I'm living my life, and I'm not going to lose sleep over that.
Mhm.
So I think that's where a lot of people feel that they need to stay in the same friends groups, or they feel, oh, I'm going to lose everyone if I stop doing this. If you start living more true to yourself, people are either going to respect it, and if they don't respect it, then they're not really your friends, or they're not really looking out for you. They're just looking for that drinking buddy, or they're
Mhm.
looking for someone to help support their own support mechanisms or their own coping mechanisms. And if that's all you are to them, then that's not being a true friend either.
Mhm. Yeah, and it does come back to mindset where, we like our brains love comfort and familiarity and routine. And whether it's our circle of friends, our lifestyle, our work, when we're used to doing things, we hold ourselves there much easier because it's familiar and because we're used to it, and because we don't have to, be conscious and aware of it. It's just what we do. And, whether it's going out at night or the conversations we hold, we ask the same questions, we do the same things because it's what we're used to, and it just comes naturally. It takes effort, and we have to be aware to ask those different questions and to dive deeper into the different conversations, and to change the things we do and the lifestyles we have, or whatever it is we're working on. It's to be conscious of it and to work towards a place where that becomes comfortable. It becomes comfortable to have those conversations where you dig deeper. It becomes comfortable to to do something you're not used to doing, because then once that's comfortable, and this is like changing any habit, our brain looks for that. It becomes easier, the triggers are less, the temptations are less, and we start to crave and enjoy those moments because of all those things.
And do you feel that still in the construction industry that people are resistant to that kind of change? Or do you feel that ever since you started your journey that it's been easier to break it down with them, to be more vulnerable with them?
I think it's easier for me now because I just have more confidence behind, the kind of the things that I've, realized through this journey. I also think that there's still a lot of advancement in just, mental health, and what we can talk about together, and the things we feel and how normal that is. I think there's a lot more, to happen still, but no matter the sector, I think it is getting better. Um, but it's realizing, um, that we're in control of how we feel about that. And when I realized that I could think differently than I was used to, it was a huge revelation for me. And then, for other people to see it, and for everything I put out, like the videos and stuff they put out, and I've written a book and like all those things, I never thought I'd do that. It was never something that I considered before, but the people around me that know me and can see that, maybe they're starting, and hopefully they're starting to think like, what, I've always wanted to write a book, or I've always wanted to do this, and I work construction, so I didn't feel like I could do that, but he did it and he does that, so I can do it too. And it's just putting enough of that out that is one, my own therapy, because I can continue to do that and feel that way and grow and learn. But then the reason I put it out there is like to show that who I used to be, who was resistant to all of that, that that's my example. So if I'm sending any messages out, it's to the attitude and the person that I used to be, because I can't speak for anybody else. I can't reach, I don't know what everybody else is going through, but if someone relates to the stuff that I've gone through and that I've done in a way that I would talk to who I used to be, then I feel the most benefit.
And if someone relates to you and your story right now, where's the best place that they can find you?
The best place is went through my website, seanrobinson.ca. There's a contact me section there. It goes direct to me. Um, through email, but I'm on all the social media platforms, putting videos on TikTok and Facebook, Instagram. It's all Sean Robinson mindset. Uh, and yeah, I'm very accessible, and everything I put out is not in a judgmental, targeted way at all. It's really just speaking to the stuff I've gone through and who I used to be.